Today, it is time to sit back and make ourselves uncomfortable. Over the next 90 minutes or so, for today's webinar, Meet the Postcard Ladies. Some housekeeping. We encourage you to use the chat function during the presentation to interact with us. Please select audience and panelists so that everyone can see. All of our sessions are recorded and sent to registered participants within 24 hours of the event for viewing over the next 2 weeks. If you would like permanent access to the recording or to view any of our past webinars, I believe there have been over 50 now since the pandemic, and we started these webinars back in 2020, I believe it was. Please do join our growing group of Friends of the Zay by contacting me, emma@thezay.org, or Maynorth, mnk@thezay.org. As ever, there'll be Q&A at the end of the webinar. Please do add your questions into the Q&A function as we go along. This helps me not miss them. Anyway, that's quite enough from me. Allow me to introduce you to someone much more interesting and who currently is in Istanbul, Dr. Reem El Mutwalli. Dr. Reem.
Hello, Emma, and hello, everybody. Good day, everyone, from the enchanted city of Istanbul. We are pleased to be back after the summer break. I'm always delighted to see so many familiar names as well as welcome all the new first-time visitors. We are humbled and honored to have you all here. As you have probably read in our last newsletter, this is the second last webinar for 2022. We love doing our webinars as it created an opportunity to meet like-minded people like yourselves. We enjoyed meeting you all and interacting with you all, and it fulfills our second part of our mission to empower and sustain global cultural dialogue to inspire creative minds. However, as a small and intimate organization with limited time and resources, we have decided to focus on the next reason for our work on the first part of our mission, advancing the preservation of cultural heritage through the collection, documentation, and digital archiving of Arab historical attire and their stories. This is, after all, the main reason why we started the Zay Initiative 4 years ago, to document and archive our growing collection. So for the benefit of those who are joining us for the first time, we always like to start by explaining that our name emanates from the Arabic term Zay. Zay literally means the costume and general attire of certain country or era. And why Arabic? Because Zay is concerned with the legacy of the Arab world. It was founded to promote the understanding and the evolution of regional culture through the Arab world through dress, to build public awareness and appreciation of the unique heritage, and to create a platform for like-minded individuals and institutions nationally, regionally, and globally. Simply put, as you always hear me say, we at the Zay Initiative collect the tangible to narrate the intangible. We collect artifacts to help record the stories of those who used or wore them. We are a UK-based or registered nonprofit that especially focuses on empowering women regionally, globally, by bringing their untold stories to life. The initiative now owns over 2,400 pieces of dress and adornment from across the Arab world and its surrounding. On our website, you will see over 400 key examples of these dresses by simply navigating the collection. We are working towards all the articles being added to the collection by publishing few articles at a time. Some of you might wonder, what do we mean when we mention the Arab world? And Arab is the cultural trait rather than a racial one. Not all Arabs are Muslims, nor all Muslims are Arabs. The Arab world is full of rich and diverse communities, ethnicities, religions, groups, and cultures, including Muslims, Christians, Jews, Yazidis, Kurds, Armenians, Amazigh, Berber, and other minorities. Differences exist not only among countries, but within countries as well. There are over 200 million Arabs worldwide. And generally, anyone who adopts the Arabic language is technically or typically called an Arab. Now today, as we will see again, today when you meet our guests, knowledge is power and freedom. Without knowledge and understanding of the past, we can't build the future. And to help us understand some of the complexities of the past, I will start to introduce you today to our guest. And I will start with Salma Ahmad Caller. She is the mastermind and curator of this project and the person behind bringing us all together today. She focuses on her mixed Egyptian-British heritage, drawing on her own collection of postcards and invoking the presence of multiple others in her own history and the histories of multi-ethnic Egypt, sharing images of her photographic work using projection, assemblage, and collage to disrupt the gaze and overlay the postcard women with other depths and possibilities of being. Salma, I welcome you here today. And perhaps you can start by briefly introducing us to the project.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reem. I hope you can all see me. Am I visible?
We can see you. I can see you.
Great. First of all, just to say thank you very much for having me and the other Imaginarium artists here today. We're very excited to be able to share with your viewers and your audience some aspects of our project. And also thank you for the Zay for being a supporting partner and part of helping us be able to get this project out to a much wider audience. So how did this all start? Some of you may have been following us for some time, and for some of you this might be quite new, but for me this started in 2018 and has always been a very personal project. As somebody who is both Egyptian and English, my father was from Egypt and my mother was from England, and I've always been searching and trying to understand what my identity is and what it means and what being an Egyptian means. And I found a postcard, a colonial postcard, which I didn't understand anything about, in 2018 of a Cairo lady. And that started this journey of exploring this very complicated and difficult archive. And it's a complicated and difficult archive because, as you can see here, you know, you have an image of a woman very often looking fabulous, wearing her cultural dress. But in other instances, and in many instances, she's been posed in various, awkward positions. Things have been faked. Various props have been added to the images. She's been shown nude, and these images have been, widely accepted as problematic images, and usually they're often ignored. The postcard itself is a kind of kitsch medium that isn't often taken seriously, and yet it's at the same time a record of some of our histories and peoples and actual real people and real heritage. And it became a kind of journey of tracking down what's authentic and what is not, and what even is an authentic Egyptian woman, which for me turned out to be, for example, here in this image, it says Egyptian types and scenes, Abyssinian woman or Abyssinian woman, which basically means she was from Ethiopia or the Kingdom of Ethiopia at the time. And very often in the 1800s, Ethiopian women were actually being traded in Cairo as or enslaved people. And Ethiopian women were highly prized, but they were also then became, incorporated into Egyptian families and Egyptian way of life. And here you can see her wearing what I think is her wedding jewelry and her wedding dress. And so for me, finding out what identity is became a very complicated journey of finding out the complicated layers behind each and every image of this woman, and an idea of authenticity turned out to be really complicated. And the Egyptian woman could be originally from Ethiopia, she could be a West African woman, she could be a woman from a dancing background, or a background of what we perhaps would have been labeled then as a prostitute, or a prostituted woman, or a working class woman, or a middle class woman, or a dancer. And then it seemed to me that we had entered into a zone of being uncomfortable with ourselves, how we try to define ourselves according to categories, racial stereotypes, and according to other people's ideas about who we should be and what an authentic Egyptian is, or what an authentic Arab is, or what an authentic Tunisian is. And how we then, as a group, when we set up the Imaginarium, I invited other artists and art historians and researchers and members of the public, and we started to discuss identity. Then many things, difficult things came out. On the one hand, there's the difficulty of dealing with the colonial gaze and colonial atrocities and crimes and ways of representing the Middle East and North African women. But then it also turned in on ourselves, and what are we doing to create stereotypes or prejudices within ourselves and within our own communities in how we perceive other people. And so this business of unpicking stereotypes, racial hierarchies, identity and prejudice makes this a very uncomfortable and tricky topic to deal with, both for ourselves and for people who are actually having to look at these images as a reminder of some uncomfortable, past colonial trauma.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask Salma, so the exhibition is a participation of a number of artists from different areas of the North Africa or the Arab world. And,
Correct.
And these artists have come together to produce artworks working on this theme of the postcard women and how they interacted with this subject matter on different levels and different mediums. And we are going to be introducing these artists as we go, and you are one of them. You are one of these artists, and we're starting with you. And I thought maybe you can elaborate more on your contribution to that exhibition, other than the administrative and all the hard work that you've been doing by bringing all of us together into this project. But as an artist, how did you work with this subject matter?
So for me, as I said at the beginning, it was always very personal. And some of the images, not this particular one you're showing here, but some of the images I introduced elements belonging to my English mother and used projections of various layers of different types of histories of Egypt and tried to project them over the top of a postcard image of a woman to introduce this feeling of the presence of other outsiders gazing at this woman all the time, including myself, kind of implicating myself, my Englishness and my Egyptianness, and the complications of the gaze of, constantly looking at these women, and how we're all implicated in this act of looking and bringing in narratives and strands from my own personal history. And in this image here, my father was an Egyptian, and he was very angry about British colonialism, even though he married an English woman. And I grew up with these sort of strifes and divisions and complications across two cultures, English and Egyptian, but also trauma and memories passed on through generations. And my father used to tell me this story of a particular incident in Egypt. I don't know if you're familiar with it, called the Din Shuai incident.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on it?
Yes, the Din Shuai incident was an incident where some Egyptian rural people became very angry and upset that some British soldiers were shooting pigeons, shooting their pigeons. And anyone who knows anything about Egyptians and rural communities, these pigeons are, an important source of income, and they belong to them, to those people, those farmers. And various arguments ensued, and innocent people were then shot and killed and taken to prison. And innocent people who were not violent, actually, who had simple farm tools and were trying to resist and stop the British soldiers. And it turned into a terrible bloody incident that left a big scar and a wound that was passed on through to my father. It happened earlier, before he was born in 1926, and yet obviously he was told the story, and that pain and anger he then transmitted to my sister and I when we were younger in the story that he told. So here you can see a picture of an Egyptian woman from a postcard, and I've added some shadows of pigeons flying around her, dark shadows, pulling various kind of shadows out of her, and behind you can see a pyramid, a typical scene, actually a famous scene of British colonial soldiers standing in front of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, and you can see a ghostly pigeon tower, Egyptian pigeon tower there over her head. And so for me, my interaction as an artist was to incorporate as many conflicting, painful and other layers and presences of different peoples, and including my own personal stories and personal histories onto that image. And in a way,
it's beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of work. And I just was wondering, is this mixed media? Is it a painting? Just give us a background, because I know you work on different mediums, Salma.
I do, yes. In my first series were called Palimpsest Presences of Others, I used a shadow box and I created projections, and I took photographs using a vintage lens and a digital camera. In the second series, I used digital and analog material together. So in this case, this is a mixture of an analog photograph with digital interventions and digital layers added over the top, and digital drawing.
Amazing. This is wonderful. I know there are many other arts works from your that you have contributed to the exhibition, and we will not be showing all the images here because we want people to go to the exhibition and to be able to look at them themselves. Thank you so much for this brief introduction, and I'm going to move now to Afsoon, our next participant. And Afsoon is an Iranian British artist with a considerable private collection of postcards of North African women collected during her many visits to French flea markets. Somewhere Between Here and Home is the title of her work. She tells us about her creative journey, taking her postcard women home and sending visions of them out to the world that ask, are we there yet? And reuniting them with aspects of their cultural heritage by nestling them within elements of North African patterns, as you see here, henna, jewelry, beads, and reassigning to their images an individuality and an alternative status to that given to them by the colonial postcard. Welcome, Afsoon, to our talk today. And I welcome you to our talk. And I know we cannot show all the images. We're showing 2 images or 3 from each artist. But I wanted you to, in your own words, to tell us about the subject matter and how does it make you feel uncomfortable from your perspective.
I'm very happy to be here, and it's a very good question about being uncomfortable. But when I first started joining Salma, when Salma asked me to join this project, which is about 2018, I was more puzzled by the double standard, because I have been collecting postcards for a very long time, and I suddenly started looking at my North African women postcards more clearly and with different eyes, really. And what struck me as sort of strange was most of the postcards that I've had are from the beginning of 20th century all the way to 1940s. And I saw the double standard of how Eastern women were portrayed at the time where Western women were highly, I mean, they were covered all the way, long skirt, puffy skirt, gloves, everything. And if their ankle was shown, it was really sexy. And at the same time, the Eastern women were portrayed semi-nude in very provocative pose. And these postcards were easily available, and it would be bought everywhere, like like a corner shop of modern time. Anybody could have access. And I found that very uncomfortable, and I still do. And I think it's something that we all should be uncomfortable about.
Mm. And how did you deal with this? This is one of your artworks. Again, I repeat, we are not showing everything because we really would like you to go and have a look at the exhibition. There is also, by the way, a book that is being published that could be bought, and it will have more information and more images that you could look at, and you can obtain it. We will be sending you a note as to where it can be purchased from, and we can talk about that as we go on. But I wanted you to give us an idea about your mediums and how you worked on the project, on the subject matter through your artwork.
Well, I'm mainly a collage artist, so that means I kind of bring different mediums together to make the end project. And the piece that you're seeing here is from the second part of the Imaginarium, where you will be seen when you come to our exhibition on Thursday. But for the first part of the Imaginarium, what I did was I looked at some of the postcards I had, and I tried to somehow change the woman from being like an object, a sex object, into an art subject by painting them. I painted it, and I covered them with mementos from their culture, like birds of North Africa, or flowers and monuments. And then I turned those into postcards, and I advertised on social media, and I sent people these postcards, these plain postcards, and I asked them to send the postcards back to me. So in a way, I tried to kind of erase the memory of the postcards first time around being used. And this time there was an art subject being posted and looked at. And I received lots of very, very interesting results, actually. More than 100 people sent postcards back to me. For the second part is what you see here. I decided I'm going to be sending the women back home. And by sending the women back home means that I try to surround them with things that they'll find familiar. As you know, with most of these postcards, we have no idea where the women are actually from. A lot of time they're just called like the beautiful Fatima, or a typical woman, or a good dancer, things like that, things just very general and very insensitive way. And I tried, and also let's not forget that I don't come from an Arab culture. I'm Persian by birth. So I try to find what is a kind of a general thing that most Middle Eastern women have in common, through jewelry, through carpet, henna, yarn, and all these things. I try to use that to surround the women, to nest them, to make a home for them. And in a way, in the first part, I send them away, and in the second part, I'm sending them back home. And you can see this one that we're looking at is patterns of carpets. From
what is the size of the work, Afsoon?
And these one beads, these are I found these in the souk in Marrakesh, and I was told ladies for their wedding and stuff would sew that, would make dresses, and they use these beaded decorations.
Yes, appliques. Yes. But what is the size of these these artworks? Are they small, the postcard size?
No, they kind of like this. They're like A3.
Okay.
And these are from my own. So the women, the postcards are from my own collection, been sort of archival printed onto artist paper, and then I have glued the collage bits on top. In this case, the beaded applique things.
Is the red color? Does the red color have a significance, or it's just a color that's used for the artwork?
Oh no, it's just that I found the pink in the market. That's all I could find at the time. And for the other one, the yarn is also bought from Morocco. I did a residency in Morocco, and I bought quite a lot of material while I was there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Afsoon. I will move now to Hamida. Hamida.
Hi, yeah.
So,
I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Hamida is an Algerian artist born in France who is now living in the UK. Wow, what a life. Her essay, Homo Arabicus, reveals to us the many facets of the Algerian woman that have been eroded by the colonial postcard, and how her art practice hopes to continue the inspiring trend of her contemporary Algerian artistic filmmakers and photographers who are reclaiming their narrative. Her photographic collage works and 3D works with the red thread entangled both the viewer's gaze and the colonial narrative within a rich reality of experiences, traditions, and poetic rituals framed for her own time. So Hamida, I would love for you if you could give us your perspective as to the question that makes this subject uncomfortable through your arc.
Well, I will introduce myself briefly. So I was born in Algeria, actually, but I moved to France when I was very young, a baby. We moved to France, as every Algerian family did back then, to seek a better life. But just like Salma, we did have, as my parents are very proud Algerian, you know, against a very vile and violent colonization. It left a very big scar in our perception of France and in our relationship with France. My vision of those postcards is at first very common. You could see them on TV programs. There was most of the time even part of jingles on Algerian TV. In between two TV shows, you'll see Algerian postcards floating on the screen. And there weren't the nude ones, the most violent ones. I think it's related to the religious side of Algeria, but they were proudly shown and exposed everywhere. Moving to France, for me, growing up in a very conservative, anti-France family, although we were in France, has always played a big role in my life, especially regarding this postcard, because as with a sense of pride, I also joined my mother's battle against France and what they did to us and how they, enslaved us for 132 years. We had these stories on and on again. And the thing is, on Algerian TV, you have every 2 weeks there's a celebration about something. 11th of November, 5th of July. Every month there's something to celebrate regarding the French colonization. My vision of these cards has always been rejection. I hated them. I rejected them. They were for me enslaved women, being trapped by the French male, and also by his lens, because they were, becoming a sort of immortalized through a picture, but still it's their body, their flesh, who they are, and their identity at the same time. So we always had a conflicted relationship with this postcard. I'm talking about myself because, as I said, in Algeria, they are a pride for the country. It's look how the French male used to consider Algerian women. After all, they hated us, they killed us, but they did have a high opinion of us, at least of our women. But for me, when I came across the nude ones, it was purely pornographic for most of them. That's when the shock started. And that's when, in my young years, hatred started to build up. But later on, I started to study them. I wanted to know what was behind them, who were these women. And as we can read often, they can be prostitutes. They can be part of a harem, which is it comes from the Ottoman Empire, but it's sort of exotic brothel, to explain it briefly. But you can also have women, as we mentioned with Salma the other day. It can also be women they can also be from the Waled Nail tribe, which was a tribe who had different habits, different tradition, where women actually worked to gather money to get married. So in order to get married, they will go and offer the services, either physical or perform music for weddings or any kind of religious events, which is very weird when you think of it. But still, they were very, very free. They were a very free tribe and very different from what you could find in Algeria back then. So you have these two sides of the Algerian female as it was represented. And I forgot to mention that the Algerian woman was one of the most photographed women, because that's where France stayed the longest. They colonized Algeria for 132 years. And as we mentioned in another event, a lot of women who were described as Egyptian, Libyan, Tunisian, Moroccan were often Algerian, coming probably from the same neighborhood. So the complexity for me was to tackle this question of who they were and maybe try to give them their identity back, trying to know where the jewelry was from, where the dresses was from. And that's what the importance of the garment and the dresses was important, because you could literally pinpoint the tribe she was for, sometimes the neighborhood she was for, which language she was speaking, in which east or west city she was coming from. So the whole important for me was to give them their souls back, their humanity back, not just being a smoking lady half naked behind the lens.
I have a lot of questions, but I know that this particular image here, the lady, I recognize her because I've seen her in so many postcards, and you're using her again. I'm wondering whether she was an actress or somebody that was known, because she was used in so many of these images. A, and B, you are superimposing her on. Is this the Christ? Is this the?
Yes. I turned her into the Pieta. I turned her into the Pieta of Michelangelo, so she can be taken for Jesus's mother. I wanted to give her the position of a saint to women. Yes. You know, in Occidental art, that's what a woman is. Either noble coming from a very wealthy family, posing for an event, such as all noble and rich people do to mark their life on earth, you know, for the other generation of children to come. So I wanted to give, this one is by the way, the Belle Fatma. That's the legend you have. This terrible saying that Fatma is not a nickname that you give to Fatima in all Algerian regions. You will find Fatma in my region, in Western Algeria, but not in Algiers. You rarely find Fatma in Algiers. But the way she is dressed says to us that she's from Algiers. So you have many, and you can see she's posing in a studio. Probably you can see the curtains behind. You can see the jewelry that no women will wear on any occasion other than a wedding, her own wedding mainly. And the whole cliche behind it, I wanted to add another cliche to it, the Holy Mother of God. So I was thinking, why not give her the full sanctity? Why not give her the highest representation of the highest woman in the art world? So my, as we say in French, clin d'oeil was towards this, how to give this woman who was just insignificant, anonymous person, indigenous, not even a person. She wasn't even considered as almost human. She was sort of native, but in a very, very pejorative way. So I wanted to just give her this rank.
Making her the mother of Christ. So
yeah. So it's a mix of Michelangelo and La Belle Fatma, who's this famous Algerian woman posing for hundreds of pictures. One she's smoking, one she's drinking, she's flirting with a man we don't even know who. So we have this sort of cliche that I wanted to twist a little bit.
Interesting. And in this artwork,
sorry?
And in this artwork, what can you give us a background to this artwork?
Well, the Belle Fatma is a postcard. I worked on it to add the Pieta of Michelangelo, and I printed it. I tried for this work, for this exhibition, if anybody comes and take a look, I'll try to print it as big as possible to give it a sort of, how would I say, prestance in French. I don't know if you would translate easily in English with the prestance word. I wanted to give it a noble size, because I went for a small one before, but I wanted to work on something a little bit bigger to give her a higher, visibility, to say.
And Hamida, what about the one Dr. Reem is showing now of the perspex in the
this one
box?
I wanted to use the tool of I don't know if you know the term curiosité. We say it's curiosity in English, but it has a different meaning when you say cabinet de curiosité in French.
Yes,
it's sort of it's exactly this. What I wanted to play with the concept of adding curious, weird things in a sort of block of frames. And with this block of frames, I was able to get different angles of this another anonymous indigenous Algerian woman. And what I wanted to do here is get her, imprison her in a box, but at the same time free her in a way, because regarding of where you are looking at her from, which point of view, you will see her in a completely different way. And sometimes you won't see her at all. Sometimes you'll see her back, and sometimes you'll see just her garment. So sometimes you even see half of her name. So you don't have the full possession and the full information about her, and you can barely see her. And she's enclosed in a very small box, which will, if when you come, hopefully see the exhibition, you'll find other women in the same box, all trapped together, but all giving us a sort of very hard time, if I can say. They're challenging our gaze to try to maybe see her or not. But so in this work, I wanted to switch the gaze. I wanted to switch the power. I wanted to change who was in charge and who had the power to on the other one. Is it us who have the power to unveil her, look at her from her head to her toes and try to get a glimpse of who she really is? Or is it her who's really almost playing with us in the way she hides, in the way she looks from the right side to the left side, from top to bottom? And there are different postcards all enclosed in the same box. So it's a 3D sort of kaleidoscopic game I tried to play here.
Yes, it's wonderful. It's a very fascinating aspect. I think one will be able to see it or understand it better because it's a 3-dimensional.
Yes.
Here seeing it in 2 dimensions, so you're not really seeing the powerful impact that it could.
You have to move around it. You have to, in a way, you have to become the photographer. You have to become the person who's looking and who's almost. I'm trying to put the person who's looking at the picture in the photographer's shoes, in the photographer's position, the one who took the postcard in the first place. But this time, she's adding more challenge to her identity. She's blurring the lines of the way she's perceived. And that's what I really wanted to play with in this artwork.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
I look forward to meeting you soon in the exhibition. Thank you.
Thank you.
And from here, we move to Alia. Alia Cherif is not with us, sadly. I mean, she's not speaking, but I hope she's part of the group that is there. And she had joined this, and she will hear us speaking about her. And the reason she's not speaking is because she can converse in French. And sadly, I can't do the conversation in French, and that was a problem for us. And we decided that we will have, Salma and I will have the discussion, and I hope she can hear it and maybe answer a few questions later on as we go along. So Alia is a Tunisian artist who was born and grew up in the city of Tunis, in Bab El Saada, Door of Joy, which is her part of the work. Alia shares with us her tender and richly layered painting and collage works, created in response to postcard images of women from the deeply misunderstood Wulad Nile tribes. And I think they might be the same that Hamida just touched upon. Reframing our notions of these women as prostitutes, a notion created by colonial photographic portraits and explosive measures by the French army in Tunisia that continue to this day to work to demean and misrepresent these people and their way of life. Alia overlays the images with the complex layers of patterns of Tunisian culture, multi-ethnic histories and experiences, and contemporary glimpses of being a Tunisian woman. She replaces the face of an Oulad Nile woman on a postcard taken by Lehert, and Landbrook with the beautiful face of Maryam Naili, a contemporary woman from Awlad Nail ancestry, linking her to these same women of the past and to the heritage that remains a taboo subject even today. Salma, would you care to elaborate a bit more on this?
Yes, thank you for introducing Alia Derouiche Cherif and her work. Yes, I think that with Alia's work, and yes, you're absolutely right, the Walid Nail are also the group that Hamida is talking about. And I think that will, that ties into this realization when we're studying the postcards, that different groups, Algerian, Moroccan, Tunisian, are claiming sometimes the same postcard woman. Partly the reason is because the borders were drawn and redrawn by colonial presences, where these tribes and groups of people were moving freely across Algeria and Tunisia, and there weren't these lines to restrict them. But also because when the colonial postcards were created, they were often also mislabeled, and sometimes different women from different areas were mislabeled as well. But at the end of the day, the interesting thing about Alia's work, and for me especially, I was blown away when I saw Alia's paintings. And I think for me, it's very often we associate not this world or colonial era of photography around the same time, and in an earlier period, there was Orientalist painting and the use of sort of random use of Islamic patterns and ethnic patterns from North Africa and the Middle East without context, whereas Alia is taking her own Tunisian and North African heritage, some calligraphy, Islamic calligraphy, some more traditional or some Amazigh aspects, and introducing these in a very specific cultural way and reclaiming this pattern and ornament that's often misconstrued or looked down upon in art. And this richly layered way of introducing her culture into the images of the Tunisian women. And this one we're looking at here, so her specific ones for this exhibition, she is looking at the Walid Nail women and the way that we understand the word prostitute. And this ties into something that I was saying when I was introducing Reem at the beginning. When I first started this project, a lot of Middle Eastern women said to me about the postcards, why should we care? They are just prostitutes. Well, obviously, for us, it's what does just a prostitute mean? And we prefer to say prostituted women because it's actually the patriarchal societies that create these women having to make these roles. But actually, the Walid Nail were living a very different type of life where there was no stigma, no social stigma. And this is something Alia was trying to investigate, that the Walid Nail women would use their sexual prowess to go and work as courtesans and raise money for their own dowries and go back home and get married. And nobody in their culture or society condemned them for that. So obviously there's a change in a lot of North African cultures with, you know, Islamic traditions also and conservative traditions that now frown upon this way of life. But at that time, it was an accepted and respected way of life. And the colonial process, as well as the conservative process, turned women who were living a healthy way of life, natural way of life, into something sinful. And I think this is what Alia is bringing through specifically in this exhibition, as well as introducing culture and Tunisian culture and traditions and patterns. But interestingly, she met a contemporary woman from Walid Nail history. And this woman, Maryam Naili, and that's her name, and you can see in her name, Maryam Naili is her history, is from the Walid Nail, told her that even today in her own family, it's a big taboo to talk about these postcards. And it's a big wound, and it's still a trauma to identify as a Walid Nail woman, even today in contemporary society in Tunisia. And so I think Alia's work is very important in bringing across that message about our prejudices and concepts relating not only to colonialism, but other various aspects within our own societies about how women are judged and how we judge other women and class them and stereotype them. So I think that, yeah, I hope everyone will come see this stunning range of work at the exhibition.
Thank you so much, Salma. And from Alia, we will move to Hala Ghellali, a Libyan.
I'm sorry, Dr. Reem. It's Hala Ghellali.
Hala Ghellali.
Yes, it's just the European. It's the colonial spelling of the name that we didn't change.
Yes. So sorry.
Yes.
Ghellali.
Yeah, but we pronounce it G in Libya.
Ghellali. Okay. Hala is a Libyan jewelry historian, researcher, and artist who now lives in the USA. Colonial Postcards from Libya, Reclaiming the Songs of Our Heritage is the title of her work. It is an homage to Libyan women and Libyan dress and ornament. Her deep blue cyanotypes of photographs taken by Italian studios during the colonialists of Libya convey both the sorrows held within these kinds of images, but also suggest the hidden depths that have been obscured. Glints of gold draw the eye to heritage jewelry pieces, which her essay tells us were rich with songs of the Bugala, correct? Did I pronounce it? And poetic and cultural meanings handed down over generations, like some of the pieces of her mother and grandmother in her own collection. Her book, Jewelry and Adornment of Libya, is being published by BLKVLD later this year. This is just a brief, but Hala, please elaborate more and carry us through the journey of your work.
Yes, of course. To start with, my first encounter with the postcards was in 2007, because I was, and I still am, one of the administrators of the first ever Libyan postcard group on Facebook. So posting postcards of women always created, a lot of discussion about the ethnicity, first of all. And then the first one that were always posted was the Leonard and Landrock that have been mentioned since we started talking today. And then, so that was the first encounter. And then as I was at the same time, collecting and researching jewelry and clothes. So I had a problem. The problem was that, old photos are scarce. I have, family photos, but whenever I requested photos, I would never get any. There's always this taboo around the family photograph. So I said, well, I will start looking for colonial postcards from Libya. And this is mainly what I collect. I don't collect any other countries, just Libya. So my first encounter, the very first postcards I bought were the one that you see. And they aren't even postcards, they are real photos. Then, and the base of my collection were photos. I'm from Tripoli, from Benghazi, Nasha and Rimoldi. Then when I started doing my research, I found out that these two photographers were the official photographers of the colonial regime, the fascist regime. So they have photographed all the fascist, events, persons, leaders, Mussolini, whatever you might think of. This is one thing. Then the second thing is, for example, Nasha, the one you see the photo here. I have the original. Is that he's also the one who photographed the Omar al-Mukhtar when he was hanged. So to give you, the extent of the work he has done, very official. What he did, I haven't found many of their photos. Rimoldi first, Cavaliere, because they were assigned, very official titles, and Nasha. And Nasha, his grandson, has wrote a book about him. So there's no mention of any postcard, or Orientalist postcard he might have done at all. So the other thing is that what made me also uncomfortable about this photo is the history of women. What the Italians did in their colonies started in Eritrea. They did something called madamismo and madamato, which is, entering in this relationship that is, I don't know if we can qualify it as marriage with local women. And this was very much, disapproved by the fascist regime for racial and racist reasons. So when I was looking at these postcards, so if Nasha photographed them, and there is very little photos, or Rimoldi, very little photos of women done by them, these might probably also women that have been under this madamato and madamismo situation. This is the main thing that made me uncomfortable with this photo. And then I started having another gaze on it as a woman. And since I was looking for, traces of jewelry and clothes, and some of the pieces you see here, we have them, I have them in my collection. So what I did, I said, okay, as a woman, I have another gaze, and I need traces of jewelry and clothes. And these are a good example. Yeah, by the way, this photos is different from the other part. This is typically Amazigh jewelry.
Mhm.
Yeah, this lot you see here in this picture belongs to an old lady, and they were going to be, melted to make a new jewelry. All these pieces, earrings, the big one, that is called tawenza, that is a head ornament, the flat bracelet. All the others are all earrings that go one into the other. So that's for, and so my project, I said, okay, since I've been working on jewelry, and I'm interested in photography, and I've been working on the cyanotypes for the last 3 years. I explored other medium, but this one, because I live in California, this is solar printing. So it's very not easy, because you have two times. It's the weather, it's the wind, it's the time of the day. And the blue for me, I'm from Tripoli. So, and even though these photos are from Benghazi, Benghazi is on the sea. Life on the seaside is permeated by the blue of the sea, the blue of the sky. A lot of blue also in traditional clothes. And that's why it triggered a lot of olfactive and visual memories for me, this blue color. And then the other part of my project related to jewelry was also that we have a lot of poetry and songs in Tripoli around jewelry.
Mhm.
And I use them in my, in the essay I wrote. And also that, and this type of photo doesn't exist of songs and poetry doesn't exist in Benghazi. It's, the Bugala is typically Tripoli, and it jumps. There's no Bugala in Tunisia, there's a Bugala in Alger. And this is a matter of history. So, and what is going on in Libya with the civil war,
Hala, what is Bugala? You need to explain it to our audience.
So Bugala is a poetry. It's a game. It's typically a women poetry game. No man involved, and it's usually the eldest lady tie. It used to be done around like a vessel, but progressively, and especially in Tripoli, they tie a handkerchief, and it's meant for someone. It's passed by the oldest lady to one of the women, and she will say a poetry that reflect either her current state, her wishes, about marriage, sorrow, love, whatever. And it's a guessing game. And then, you know, the handkerchief keeps on going around the place, and the same woman would recite according, you know, her guessing, what's in the mind of the woman to which the handkerchief is passed.
Interesting, interesting. Thank you so much for this introduction, and we are looking forward to seeing the actual artworks. And I know we're going to be hosting you soon, I hope, to talk about Libyan jewelry, because you have a wealth of information on that, and that's the part that I'm particularly interested in for the Zay. So I'm so happy you could join us for this webinar and to give a brief introduction as to your work and on many levels. And I look forward to your book, inshallah, when it comes out. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And from Hala, we move to our last group, and that is the CritTeam. Sadly, they are delayed. They are in transit. They are between London, going from Spain to London, and there has been some delays in the travel arrangements. So again, we will rely on Salma to give us a short brief on their work and their contribution. So maybe I'll give the floor to you, Salma.
Thank you so much, Reem. Yes, it was unfortunate because they were so eager to be here and share their work.
Yes.
And I think that what's fascinating for me, and when I started the Imaginarium project, was how entangled East and West are, how entangled even within my one body, English and Egyptian, but between and entangled we are. For example, Alia speaking French, even though she is from an Arab country, and how colonialism and those presences are within our bodies and within our tongues, and we can't escape them even now. And very interestingly, something I didn't realize, for Eugenia and Miguel, they are a duo who work together, and their particular angle for this exhibition is the relationship with Spain and Morocco. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Rif War. And they're also collectors like all of us. They like to go around flea markets and antique markets in Barcelona. So whilst Afsoon is collecting in France and I've been collecting in the UK, they have been collecting postcards from Morocco, but also responding to some Tunisian images. So I'll try to explain here briefly what their three projects are for the Imaginarium exhibition. They actually, I'll just read a little bit of their bio, because they emerged in the UAE in 2013 as a duo who worked together, exploring the intersections of art and architecture and culture, and questioning common notions of tradition, ornament, and identity. And CritTeam's work is rooted in digital and traditional media like photography, collage, and drawing, but then they also do video and installations. And their practice explores post-avant-garde discourses of colonialism, Orientalism, modernism, and non-Western ornamental art. And they both have PhDs in architectural design, and they were actually teaching in the UAE. And for the phase 2 of making the Postcard Women's Imaginarium, they present 3 works. And here on the slide you're showing on the left, it's one of 4 works called Out of the Blue Nude. And in this one, you can see images of Moroccan women that have been collaged into a silhouette of Matisse's famous modernist work called The Blue Nudes. And they wanted to draw attention to the fact that Matisse and other Orientalist painters were creating an idea or an ideal image of the female body, whilst at the same time they were actually traveling and going to North Africa. And there were a lot of collections of these postcards that actually Matisse owned as well. So they wanted to have this clash between this idea of the Western abstracted nude and the way that Moroccan women were being portrayed. And you can see that contradiction and juxtaposition jarring in a very fascinating way, actually, in that image. And then on the one on the right, this is actually one of 18 And for me, this is very fascinating because they have used the Nasrid tessellated ornament designs from the Alhambra Palace in Spain. And you can see there's a one design here, and each of the 18 has a different design to cut up some images of nude young Tunisian women taken by Leonard and Landrock. Now, Leonard and Landrock are often lauded for their photographs of Middle Eastern and North African monuments, and everyone tries not to talk about these young underage Tunisian naked women that they photographed and made a lot of money out through exploiting these young bodies. And to try to cut this the gaze onto these women by cutting the view using an Islamic Nasrid Spanish origin, Islamic Spain origin ornament design was for me a very radical gesture. And I think you'll find all of us are using various forms of pattern and ornament from jewelry and Islamic art and other traditions. And they have chosen this one in a very interesting way. And they call this the Facebook collection. And you can come and see it in the gallery. It's very extraordinary. Because while I was trying to have our discussion on our Making the Postcard Women's Imaginarium blog and sharing some of these more nude and violent images, as Hamida rightly calls them, that we don't share, we don't talk about, we're embarrassed, we're ashamed, and we can't even actually share them on social media because Facebook then banned me for a week. And the only way to show these images was to show them by cutting them up into pieces. And this is their very ingenious way to respond to disrupting the gaze. And if we go to the next slide, so this is the third set called Karida Naina, my dear daughter or my darling girl. And this relates in a very personal way to Miguel and Eugenia's own family history and family stories, and a collection of postcards they found in a Barcelona flea market that a soldier, a Spanish soldier in the Rif War in Morocco, sent back to his young daughter. And they actually found a whole set of these postcards where he addresses his daughter. And sometimes they had these pictures of Moroccan women on them, and and his daughter calls them dolls. And he writes a message on the back. And through this series of drawings, they use a special thing called sanguine, which is a red kind of chalk. And they use this to recreate the images on those postcards. So it's a kind of intervention in the postcard. And then they started drawing on their own family history and some relatives who also fighting in various wars and in the Rif War in their own family. And so then everything has become personal again, as it is, as you've noticed, with each and every one of us. The story and the way we have interacted with the postcards is a deeply personal journey, as well as a political one, and as well as an artistic one. And so I really recommend people come to see this work and meet Eugenia and Miguel, because they are almost here in person and they can tell you more about this specific piece as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Salma. This is so fascinating and so interesting. From this one, we are going to move to the last slide in our talk today, and it is the Zay's contribution. Now, we were very fortunate to be invited by Salma to this exhibition as guest participants. Our role as the initiative is to shed light onto the Arab world and to allow a platform for people to discuss and dialogue throughout about the area, with the globes around us. And Salma invited us and to spread the word. And then she came back and asked us to present a piece, something. So we are by no means any artists. We were just trying to create a documentative image that could speak about the role that the Zay is playing. And I want Salma to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it myself. But just to start this, it's a composite image that we tried to capture or to be inspired by what is happening with the postcard women, to tie it to the postcard women by posing 3 generations of women, taking a photograph of them in a piece or a dress that we have in the Zay collection, and putting them, have these women put that dress on, each one of them from a different generation, and then composing the whole image together. So I leave the floor to you, Emma, to Salma, to give us a brief on all of this.
Thank you, Reem. Yes, I remember very clearly our initial conversations about this work. And just to say, we're very honored and delighted to have these beautiful works in the exhibition. And they're very joyful to me, very joyful responses, and to have them in our book as well. And so that's, very exciting for us to have you in there. And I remember our first conversations where you were trying to work out how to engage with the postcard women. And it is difficult. And I think you faced that difficulty. How do you, when you interact with the postcard, are you imposing something of yourself? And yes, absolutely. Every time we do this, we're imposing an element of ourselves onto the postcard women. And your response in the end, and you talk about this in your essay in our book, was to just go straight to portraying yourselves and your family, 3 generations of your family, wearing a piece of traditional clothing, and being able to show that you have the benefit of having your own choice to represent yourselves in the way that you want to be represented, and that many of the postcard women did not have that luxury and opportunity to represent themselves. And the power of representation is enormous. And we can never underestimate the power of the colonial postcards still circulating on eBay and Etsy and flea markets. And so your approach in the end, and I remember challenging you and wanting you to make this personal. Yes. And you made it personal with your mother and your daughter, and the 3 of you wearing the Hashmi gown, or overgarment from your Iraqi heritage, and the fact that although your home is now UAE, but you came from Iraq, and there are those same conflicts and identity issues in your own family about coming from multiple backgrounds, and the fact that actually we are all coming from very mixed backgrounds and facing these identity choices. And that, interestingly for me, you chose an Iraqi dress, and I was born in Mosul, so I have a very deep soft spot for Iraq, so that did make me very happy. And you've shown yourself accessorizing as well in your own choices and in your own ways.
Correct. And I thought it is interesting that looking just at one family, we are 3 women of 3 different generations. My mother is half Iraqi, half Turkish. Her mother is Turkish, so my grandmother was a Turkish woman. So that ties in the rest of the area, the Islamic world. I myself married to a Kurdish Iraqi, so that's another layer that adds to it. My daughter being born in America, so she's an American, but with parents of an Arab heritage. So you have these multi-layers and multi-facets that we live through, and different truths, different perspectives, different objectives. And I thought this would represent exactly what the Zay is trying to do, is bringing all these cultures, bringing all these perspectives, thoughts, ideas, putting them there for people to discuss. I am being told from Emma that we have loads and loads of questions. So I'm going to move into the next slide and allow Emma to put these questions through that I'm sure that many of you would like to address. Thank you all for giving us this opportunity to give an idea about your work to the audience we have. And I really encourage everyone that cannot come to ask for the book and have the book in order to understand more and to have their own version of the exhibition. Salma, maybe you can tell people how could they get the book to start with?
Yes, the book is being published by an independent publisher run by one woman. Most of the people that Imaginarium have tried to work with are independent, single-minded women who are running their own show and doing their own thing. So Jane Glennie is the owner of Peculiarity Press, and she is printing our beautiful book, which actually is coming to the gallery on Thursday, which we're very, very excited about. So we'll get our first glimpse. So if you go online to Peculiarity Press, and you can see our book there, and you can order it. It's £25, and you can start pre-ordering it now. If you come to the exhibition on Thursday, you can get it at a discount from Jane directly. Or you can pre-order.
Wonderful. Thank you. I feel very much like I'm not the right person to be moderating this Q&A. It literally a fascinating conversation for me as British, but ultimately having grown up all over the world and predominantly in the Arab world. It's a very fascinating conversation that I feel we've really only touched the surface of, and I look forward to continuing to explore this subject with you in a couple of weeks when we have Ariella on our screens, and also through the exhibition, our further work with you. So many questions coming in. I'm going to do my very, very best to portray everything through the chat, and please everyone keep answering, putting them in the Q&A, and I can try and bring them up. So I think first of all, let's go to the factual. Hala, on slide 19, maybe Dr. Reem, if you could just whiz to that slide.
Yes.
The necklace, is this a typical Libyan item?
Which one?
Slide 19,
This
the
is,
slide before.
well, no, this one is, there's no necklace. Which one? This one? You
Yes,
mean the
I think,
one that someone asked a question about this horned
yes.
necklace? Yeah,
Yes.
yes, it is. It is, you know, it's worn all over the coast in Tripoli, and it isn't anymore, but it used to be.
And
Because, you know,
the
jewelry
lady,
has changed through the decades, but this is an item that you would find in every woman jewelry.
okay, because the lady mentioned, or the gentleman, sorry, I can't remember who asked the question, but that they'd seen it on a lot of old photos from Egyptian. Where is that?
Oh no, this
Very
is a Libyan necklace.
Okay,
It's
Libyan neck.
it's called Libit Grun, because you see there's this the spiky parts are like horns, and it's known as libba, this type of necklace, because usually, you know, necklaces in the cities, you have two types. You have the shahriya. I'm talking vintage, okay? The shahriya, which is like the kirdan like style, typically Libyan. And the other one with the horns. Both have this. Both are not worn anymore. The pieces that you can find are vintage.
And is there anywhere where somebody could reference to find more information about Libyan necklaces, and that you could recommend? Is there a book? Are you writing a book yourself?
Yeah, well, they have to wait for my book.
When is your book being published?
Yes, they will have to, you know, hopefully.
Is it in your head or is it on paper?
Yes, they promised that it will be out in 2 months. You know, it's been a long process.
Fantastic. So it really is.
All the information are in my book. Research.
So wonderful. Well, please, once it's ready, let us know, and I can share the link with all our followers and with the Zay.
Yes, of course.
And that leads brilliantly on back, Salma, to the question: are we able to put the link of where people can buy the book about Imaginarium onto the Zay Initiative email that we send out tomorrow, so that people can see it and start purchasing it, pre-ordering it?
Yes, I can send you the link now as well
Perfect.
on the WhatsApp.
So, lovely. So everyone, I will share that with you in the email follow-up with the recording of this webinar tomorrow. That's brilliant. Okay, perfect. So a lot of people have asked when they can see the exhibition, whether you can buy tickets, and also whether for those who can't get to London, whether the exhibition is ever going to be digitalized. Salma, I pass to you to tell us all about the exhibition.
Well, the exhibition is opening the day after tomorrow. Tomorrow is a really big day for us all here. We're setting up the exhibition in Camden at Camden Image Gallery, and we'll be opening the gallery will be open at 11 o'clock in the morning on the 22nd of September, and we're having our opening party from 6 to 8 p.m. But actually at 5 p.m. we're screening a film by Ariella Aisha Azule, and I really recommend anyone in London to come at 5 to see that extraordinary film, which actually puts a lot of what we've been talking about here through her lens as a Jewish Algerian in that film. And the rest of the private view is from 6 till 8, where you can actually meet Alia Derouiche Cherif. Sadly, Hala Ghellali is not coming, but the rest of us will all be there, and you can meet us in person. And the exhibition closes on the 4th of October. Sadly, at the moment, it's not going to be digitized. You can find a lot on my website, and I'll share the link to that with Emma as well to share in the newsletter. And we have part of Imaginarium has a collaboration with the Mixed Museum. And there will be some elements about this postcard project and the artists on the Mixed Museum website. And the Mixed Museum looks at mixed Arab British people like myself and explores that area as well. And we have some mixed Arab Brits who contributed their own works to our exhibition, and that'll also be online.
And Salma, will all the works be within the book as well that's coming out?
Many of the works are in the book. Many of the works are in the book. Not all the works are in the book, because obviously we couldn't pack them all in. But the book is very, very richly illustrated and will be absolutely gorgeous. So
fantastic. So I think go back to, if you're sadly not in London, buy the book. Then, you'll get, and does the book ship worldwide, or will it eventually be on Amazon Kindle?
It will.
We'll find out.
At the moment, it's limited edition to 200 copies. But if it sells well, I'll do another release. But yes, they will be. I'll be posting them out internationally.
Okay, fantastic. Are any of the panelists familiar with Dr. Gillian Vogelsang Eastwood's book? She's also a creative advisor for the Zay Initiative, called Veiled Images. And did it inspire any of your work? Anyone got any thoughts on it that they can contribute to the conversation? Salma.
No, actually, I saw that book in the chat and was amazed. I haven't actually heard of it, and I would love to actually get hold of that book and see it. I mean, obviously, I've got a huge pile of books that I've been referring to since 2018. Just to quickly, before I forget, to go back to about the exhibition, I will be creating a video about the exhibition, which will be on Vimeo. At some point, I will share that link of the exhibition on Vimeo. But to go back to your question about this book, fascinating. No, I'm not familiar with that book. So no, I look forward to understanding what's actually in that book and to reading it.
Fantastic. Well, we can connect you with Dr. Gillian, Dr. Reem.
I'd love that. Yes.
We work very closely.
I know the book, and I've read through it, and there are many it resonates with this exhibition a great deal. And yes, I'm not sure whether Ansi, our blog manager, has covered it in one of the blogs. She was working on something of the sort, and I think also she will be interested in working on a blog with Hala on her book in order to help her promote it, because that's where we come. This is our role as we see it.
Fantastic. Another question for our panelists, and please jump in, Afsoon, Hamida, Hala. Did the local men and women even know these postcards were being made? It seems impossible to happen with their awareness. That's a question from our floor.
Who goes first? Who wants to go first?
Hamida, if you have something to say, go for it.
Can you repeat the question again so I can gather my thoughts and my English words?
Of course. Did the local men and women even know these postcards were being made? It seems impossible to happen with their awareness.
I don't think. Once again, the focus is shifted on the Arab male, you know, the ferocious brown men. And I remember this sentence from Gayatri Spivak, the Indian feminist, who said it was literally white men wanting to free brown women from brown men. So there's often the question of what was the brown man doing while these women were being photographed naked? Well, as in every society, you will have men probably fully aware of what was happening. It might be family members who were probably sometimes, who knows, running the photography, probably providing, who knows, maybe actresses, maybe some of them were actresses. We don't have a great documentation about these women, about this era, but there might some of them might have been aspiring actresses or models, or for what we know, very powerful women. So there might be also a relationship of maybe, we don't know, respect, a sort of a tacit contract between family members of these men. They were probably aware, some might not have been aware, because as I said, these postcards were meant to be distributed in France to get the white French male to come and be, you know, local and neighbor to these beautiful ladies in these exotic countries. But I'm pretty sure male were knew about them, because the photographs were not just only photographing women. They also took pictures of the whole country. The entire country has been photographed before they colonize the country. That's how they proceed. Western countries go before anything is official. They send what they called ethnologists, who were basically military men who were sent with a camera and a notepad and were pretending to be scientifics, who were gathering lots of data about who we are going to colonize. So there's this idea about, once again, what was the brown man doing while all these white people, while he was probably being photographed as much as and as often as these women were photographed, because you have a lot of pictures of type, because sort of a group of people who the French military were trying to make a database of all kind of Algerian indigenous people you could find throughout the country. You have the red nail, you have the Moresque, you have the beautiful white women from Algiers, you have Sahara women from southern Algeria, and you have also loads of men among them. So I believe there was a knowledge of what was going on. The nude part, as we were saying with Afsoon the other day at the workshop, were distributed in sort of clandestine way. And by the way, even to this day, they are the most expensive postcards of Algerian women, the pornographic ones. They are always about £100 on eBay. They are the most expensive one. So the nude and sexual ones were limited. The distribution was limited. It was hidden. It was secretive. But the one of normal, let's say, everyday women was common knowledge. And also there was this habit that still goes on, that was very popular until the 90s, is to go to the photographer and to get your picture taken on day. I have myself many very solemn pictures of me and my brothers on Eid Day or on very important events. So going to the photographer as having your picture taken is something very important, and people were poor, so they didn't have the money to go to the photographer. So there might have been the situation where families or women used to go to the photographer to have a picture taken, and it probably is where our tradition to go on Eid and get our picture taken from the French colonizer, who were doing the same with Algerian women, Algerian infants, Algerian children, and Algerian couple, because this tradition kept on going until photography became obsolete and phones took place. So this whole tradition of photography is probably something very popular, no matter what we say. And you could find them in the Algerian colonized country. It was the colonization was ongoing, and you could see those postcards at every shop in Algeria. So people would come across this picture on a daily basis. So there was no secret around this photography.
Can I just interject
Afsoon.
there just to say that there's a very interesting book called Camera Orientalis by Ali Baghdad called Reflections on Photography of the Middle East. And he also talks about the complicated networks between local people and local men and the photography practices surrounding indigenous people or local people or people of that place. And those relationships are complicated, and partly why we set up and called this webinar, sit down and make yourselves uncomfortable, is that we should be asking this question: what were the brown men doing when the women were being photographed? Just a slight correction to Hamida, the naked women, it was the European naked women that were clandestinely shared. The naked Black women, and we must come to that aspect about Black bodies and brown bodies, were shared very widely and across all of Europe. They were just everywhere as well. And they're still just as widely available. But going back to the very important question, I can't remember who asked this question, but there is this patriarchal network and the networks and systems where some brown men were feeding into the colonial power networks to profit off it in their own ways. So I think part of making ourselves uncomfortable is to question ourselves and our own ways in which we were implicated, or our historical ancestors were implicated in the process of sharing photographs of women. But also, as Hamida points out, there were different situations. Some women were going to take their photos in studios for Eid or for a festival. Other women who were prostituted women were more likely to have been coerced into being shown naked. And who was benefiting from these bodies of these women? It wasn't just the European men and the photographers. And obviously it's a separate situation and issue, but it's still an issue in our societies about patriarchy and how women are subjugated and find themselves in these positions. And also another thing that Hamida rightfully points out is women had different powers that we don't always appreciate, like the Walid Nail women had a different power structure than we're used to. And that was accepted by the men in their society, and there was nothing wrong in that. So the complications and the layers are very important. It's important not to oversimplify. This is not a simple topic, and we can't find simplistic answers.
Well,
Afsoon,
I think Afsoon wanted to interject here.
Yeah.
Maybe we should give her the floor a little.
While I was researching, I realized that the French government had the biggest postcard making company, the biggest postcard making company, which went on, I think, till 1970s. And they hired a lot of people in the colonies to produce these postcards, because there was, for a variety of reasons, like bringing men into the colony to show the savages to the anti-colonists and all that. But there were a lot of people on ground that they were hired were actually locals, and the locals were finding women from different tribes, and they were bringing basically not their own sister or mother, but somebody from some other areas. So there is that aspect. I don't know that much about, but from my research, there were a lot of actually men, what you call brown men, were involved in making the postcards.
Indigenous men that are culprit into it.
It's I'm conscious of the time, and I know we were scheduled just for 90 minutes and our time is up and a few people are having to leave. Anyone who does have to leave, don't worry, we will get the recording to you all, but I know this conversation is really fascinating. Carol, one of our audience, has made a very interesting point. I have photographed people around the world, always with their permission. Some people declined because they said they didn't want their photo to end up on a postcard. This suggests permission was probably not requested. Which I just think is something to always sort of think about. Wow. So
thank you so much.
Please, Dr. Reem.
Well, thank you so much. Do we have any more questions, or do we need to wrap up, Emma?
I think we do need to wrap up very soon. I think if I maybe we should unpack the rest of the questions, and maybe we could come back to them in a blog post, maybe following the exhibition.
That'd be wonderful.
Might be the best, because as I say, a lot of people are sadly having to leave due to time, so that might be the best way to go through them, because it's such a important topic, and so
Love
many
that idea, yes.
things that
Wonderful
we have to
idea.
unpack.
Thank you so much, Selma. Thank you, ladies.
Just
Sorry.
one last
Thank
thing.
you.
It was lovely. Thank you.
Just one very last thing. After the exhibition and the book, what's next, Salma?
Oh, maybe nothing for a while. Next year, there's going to be a continuation of my project with the Mixed Museum, if we can get the funding, which is continuing to look at mixed Arab, British and mixed North African people and their very complicated, even more complicated relationship across the divide, and unpicking, you know, a bit like the postcards, unpicking those complicated relationships across East and West.
Fantastic. And everyone just needs to follow you, Salma, and to keep up to date with your work and what you're doing. We will share all the hashtags, and obviously we will also share what you're doing on our newsletters, because it is absolutely fascinating. That's enough from us today. I wish I didn't have to wrap up the conversation, but we really look forward to welcoming you all back to our screens on Tuesday, the 11th of October for Unruly Jewels, neither Muslim nor Jewish. And Salma will be, I'm delighted to say, back on our screens at the other end of her exhibition. Please, all those in London, I wish I was going to be there, but I'm just not going to be in the next couple of weeks. Please do head to Salma and the Imaginarium projects exhibition. It is going to be fascinating. For all of you based in Dubai or the UAE, don't forget to visit the Zay Initiative's ongoing exhibitions at both the Shindag museums and also at Mall of the Emirates. We really would like to thank you, and particularly our friends at the Zay, for your continued support. We do love bringing these conversations, however uncomfortable they make us feel,